Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am joined by my friend, Rheanna Bernard, who is a National Guard spouse and a social media strategist and manager. Hi, Rheanna.
Hello, Sue.
I'm so happy you applied. I know I pushed you to do it for a highlight because I really, I think it's really important for your voice to be heard because you're a social media strategist. And when we talk about remote work opportunities and portable work opportunities for military spouses, this is a career field that a lot of people are interested in. And I'm not quite sure that one, they know what it entails. And two, if they know what it entails and they're ready to get started, they don't necessarily know how to get started and get clients, right?
Yes, it is a unique and awesome opportunity.
So I thought that we just jump right in because I'm hoping everybody read your highlight. If you haven't and you haven't heard Rihanna's story, go ahead and go read the highlight on the website because it'll, talk to you about her career trajectory, like her challenges, rewards, etc. And you'll learn a little bit more about her family. So we'll just assume you've read that and we're just going to jump right into the questions. So back to what we were saying. If someone is interested in becoming a social media strategist, what are some skills that they should have or they should invest in, and how would they get started?
I, I will say I believe that this career field is super exciting and super interesting, but it is super unique in the fact that it doesn't, in particular, have a set educational trajectory. I have coworkers in the marketing field who have marketing degrees and have digital marketing degrees, and social media is one of those things that you just don't see taught in the classroom because is so often. And so I really believe that the skill set that you need to actually do this job effectively is just the all-consuming appetite when it comes to social media and just really staying on top of it. Another thing that's super helpful is to go to the different platforms that offer certifications in their own platforms. Like Meta has their own social media course, and it's like a master's levels course. I mean, it's hours upon hours and months to do it, and it really gets into that nitty gritty stuff that was more of like educational, but really it's just spending time in it is really how you get good at it, you know?
I mean, because you have what I read, so I did read your
Like,
highlight. So I know you have 15 years of experience in this, right?
yeah,
So like you
which
don't.
predates a lot of these platforms.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah.
this is it seems like one of those cases where you can have the book smarts, but you have to have the experience too. And maybe the experience, if you don't have all the formal training from college and social media marketing, this is one of those cases where you can make up for it with certifications and experience.
Yes. Yes. And the nuances and stuff like that. You know, you can get really good at a particular platform if you don't want to develop that skill in all the platforms because there's so many. You know, you can really make up for that educational lack.
Yeah, and so I think that's probably what makes it appealing to a lot of military spouses who are
Yes.
for something they can get into and that can be portable because even if they need certifications, they can do that on their time, right? Like they can do it when they have the time to get on there and take, 2 hours to do the next part of that course or something. So I
Yes.
think that's why it's appealing. So I'm glad we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So since you bring it up about how you have to stay up to date and everything, what are some social media trends that we should be aware of right now?
Actually, one of the most exciting ones that I just kind of really got into this week is LinkedIn is really starting to push their vertical video, which is I find fascinating. It's the vertical video trend. Obviously, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, and even Facebook is really pushing their reels, which is hilarious to me. And now LinkedIn is doing the same thing because with everything you start to see younger generations move in on all of these platforms, and each generation likes what they like in a certain way. And to have vertical video start making an appearance on LinkedIn is just fascinating to me. And I think that's something, that people need to be willing to put themselves out there and do something that kind of feels strange to do video like that on such a professional platform. But, taking that risk is really what social media is all about. And that's kind of a fun trend that is, repeating itself, but just on a new platform.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here and ask, what is a vertical video?
So a vertical video is YouTube, like YouTube, but it's up and down, right? So like YouTube Shorts would be vertical video. And it's really meant to be consumed on your mobile device.
Oh,
And
it's like
a lot of these
literally vertical, like your phone is going vertical instead of horizontal.
literally vertical. And it's so interesting because I think LinkedIn for the longest time has been a very traditional, like desktop, laptop type of
Right.
platform. And to see it kind of make this transition to being mobile driven is fascinating to me.
Oh, that's so cool. No, see, this is why we need experts because you're watching these things. And I don't know that I would have thought of there was a difference between vertical versus horizontal. And I know better because when we worked together, you would get on my case
Yes,
about I need it vertical. So no, that's a really great point. So
yes,
this is a great segue to the next question because, I think that's, we have the luxury of having a social media manager and we always have, but there are other people out there who don't have that luxury yet. And there are other people who want to handle it themselves. So for those people who are building or maintaining a brand, where should they be spending their social media time and resources? I mean, I'm just assuming they have limited social media time and resources, right?
yes.
So where should they be focusing?
So one of the things that I tell either when I start a new position with a new company or when I was working with you in the past, or I'm doing any kind of consulting, I let them know like you have your own personal favorite platforms that you like to use. Like you as Sue, you have platforms that you like to use personally, right? But you need to find the audience that you're looking for. What platform are they using? And so in my current position, when I came on, I didn't see them doing a lot of activity on like an Instagram or a TikTok. And I said, I know that most of you guys really prefer using like Facebook and Instagram, right? But if we want to keep growing our business or target, a specific age group that we want, we have to go to where they are. And so if you use that kind of as your starting point, and hey, if I'm really targeting like 23 to 28 or young military spouses or whatever it is, go where they are. And you're going to want to start with the platform that has the biggest return for you. And then as soon as you can add more into that, add more into that. But the first step is really going where your client or anyone that you're interacting with is. And that can kind of help you keep it small, right? Until you're able to take on more and more. Because I mean, there's like 10, 12 platforms you could be on. And honestly, who has time for that when you're running your own business?
Yeah, no, you're so right. And some of us are more risk averse, where I think TikTok is so much fun, but with us, if because it's a business account, we
Hmm.
can't, we're not on TikTok, right? And then like
Yes.
we had a preference of like being on X and Twitter, but X and
Yes.
Facebook, but we realized that our audience that was growing the fastest was actually on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I think that brings us to a great point, which is I think to help you identify what platform you should be on, you should be tracking metrics and
Yes.
and then that helps you identify where your sweet spots are. Yeah.
Yep.
You can tell I'm totally taking advantage of your expertise here because we haven't talked about your personal life yet. We're just talking, or your professional life. We're talking about your expertise. So one
Yeah.
more question about the expertise, and then we'll get in on
Okay.
the military spouse side.
I
So
love talking about it, so it's fine.
I know because we're picking your brain. So I know
Yes.
we spoke a little bit earlier about the positive trends, but on the flip side, there's a dark side to social media, right? Because it's
Yeah.
so difficult to keep up with all the risks on the different platforms. Like you said,
Yeah.
there's a multitude of platforms and you can't know everything about everything.
Hmm.
So are there any tips out there for people who are maintaining their own platforms? Like where should they go to keep up on trends and alerts?
Well, one of the things that I really like to share with people that I know are risk averse, working right now in the financial industry, I would say that that's a very risk averse industry. And it's all about a change of your mindset. For example, when you think of something that's reliable, say you personally, you're looking for something that's steady, that's even, that's chill, that's very respectable, almost buttoned up, right? Okay. So if you are someone who's younger, like say my teenagers or people who are in their early 20s, they're going to associate trust in something that they like with something silly and funny. And they're going to see, oh, that person is doing this hilarious trend, like something crazy. I'm going to actually want to go shop with them because they get it. Right. And so I think identifying risk is more than just staying up on trends. I think it starts too with identifying how you're viewing a certain risk and why you're viewing that risk that way. And that can help you kind of weed through it. But there's so many awesome places like Hey Orca or the Morning Brew, and these are all kind of marketing, digital marketing newsletters. A lot of times, if you can put a little bit of money into a scheduling app like Loomly or Hootsuite, which are really designed for maybe smaller industry, they have a lot of social media accounts themselves and webinars and things like that where you can also stay up to date because they have the time and they dedicate whole person just to staying up on that kind of stuff. So getting yourself connected with that kind of stuff, following those platforms, even if you don't because who are staying up to date as best as you can with this industry. Because anyone that tells you, oh, I've got TikTok, I've got Instagram or algorithm on lock, I know everything, is probably lying because you can't. You
No,
know what I mean?
exactly.
You can't know. You can't know.
No, because it
So,
changes and then it's working while it works, and then when it doesn't, you have like those little, I mean, when we were working together, we had those little crisis moments where a couple times like Meta at the time, Facebook just went down.
yep,
And so it's yeah, so and then
nothing you can do.
but then we were also following all the accounts, so then we could kind of pulse it, and we're like, oh, this was a nationwide,
Yes.
so it wasn't just us. So I get what you're saying. I think that's really important, and you're right, because if we start following those accounts like on X and on Facebook, and then when there's something up, they do share that. You're absolutely right. I should remember that.
Yep.
Okay, so I promised everybody we would talk a little bit about your professional career.
Okay.
And it was like we got to know each other when you're freelancing with NMSN because you
Yes.
were a freelancer and you were working on social media for various accounts, various solopreneurs, etc. And then in recent years, when we lost you, it was because you went to go find a full-time job and you went to
Yeah.
work for a credit union, which is
Yes.
amazing. I see you doing really fun stuff.
Yeah.
So how has that transition been, like going from freelancing to, like full-time work with one business?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just talking to someone else and I was like, I had this experience in the corporate world now, which a credit union isn't technically like corporate, but when you're talking about freelancing and like doing like a nonprofit situation, which is what I've been doing basically, other than teaching, I did a little bit of teaching for a while during COVID. It does feel very corporate because nonprofits operate in such a different way. It has been an interesting transition. I really enjoy it. And it's different, right? It's just different. And different for me in the social media world is exciting. I do find myself in that kind of nonprofit-esque type world where you're really working towards bettering something. But what I really think is cool about a credit union, and to plug the credit union life, is that credit unions are built on helping the community. And so I've been able to transition, some of my thought processes and some of my own personal passions as far as giving back all the time into the credit union world. And that's kind of been a little fun side, unexpected joy that's come from
That
transitioning to more of a business like
That
environment.
probably helped with the transition and that it didn't seem so jarring. I love that. And I know
Yes.
that you like in your highlight you kind of gloss over being a professional volunteer, but you and I were catching up in the green room about like what age your kids are now. And so now they're all in school and some of them are getting ready to leave, like graduate. And I think that was probably a lot of what dictated the fact that you were freelancing at first, because then you were able to be flexible. Because I know you're a band mom, you're a swim mom, you're a dive mom. I mean, you're
Yeah.
all the things. Um, and I guess when the kids got older, that's what helped with the transition into full-time work. But you've always been really involved with kids' activities and maintaining your own personal brand while working a full-time job. Like,
Yeah.
how do you balance it all? Like, because you're somebody who you just want to have it all, and you don't necessarily want to have it all at different times. You want it all at the same time. So
Yeah, sometimes I don't do myself any favors, but I think that's a very relatable story. My spouse, he has always had a very high up tempo career, even when he was full time air guard. And I've always had to keep myself busy while maintaining the home and the children, mostly by myself. And I think there are a lot of military spouses out there who have been able to develop these amazing careers as lawyers and doctors and teachers and nurses and all that kind of stuff. But I know that there's also some military spouses out there who, just by the sheer up tempo of their spouse career, have had a very difficult time. And I think that I am an example of that. And there are ways that you can fulfill all your hopes and dreams, and like you said, being a professional volunteer, that's how I started out when I moved here in 2012 into the DC area. It was just volunteering. And, I transitioned that to working with kids programs, so from a military nonprofit to, right? Like, so all those skills that I learned along the way have also helped me here with, budgeting and, working with all different kinds of people. And it's, I think there's a way for you to have it all. I mean, that's the whole basis of your organization too, right? Like, trying to juggle military life with career life and what that means and what is look like, and how it's different for everyone. And I think that the career that I've done, and also you, by the way, has is an example of that. Our all is different, both of us, right?
No, totally. And I so relate to that because I was totally a professional volunteer and where I landed up now, my husband's retired, so I can see the other side of it. Where I ended up now is not where I started because my degrees are in international relations and I'm not using, well, it helped with the sofa. It helped a lot with the sofa, but the
Yes.
majority of the time I'm not using it, right? But and so it's interesting that I feel like I do have it all, but I did not have it all at once. So
Yes.
the early years when we were overseas and, even though our son was in school full time, all of a sudden it was a sofa, couldn't work. So at that time it was, I had a fulfilling family life and, I was home for Garrett and we got to travel, but there were no work opportunities. And then
No.
coming to DC, it was like, okay, finally got the work opportunities after much struggle, right? Because nobody in DC is looking to hire a military spouse and not at that time. And now it's a different story. But so all of a sudden you have like work opportunities, but then your family suffers a little bit because you're working full time and full time in DC is not a 40-hour week. It's way more than that.
No.
And I
No.
think a lot of people everywhere can actually relate to that. I mean, it'd be great to have a 40-hour week. Um,
You
but so I think
Sorry.
exactly what you said. You can, I mean, I think we can have it all, just not all at once.
Well, you sparked something right in my brain there when you were talking, because the military spouse life that you and I grew up in is far different
Yeah,
than it is now. A lot of these, I chose not to finish my teaching career back in the day because the certification was not like it is now. It
right.
wasn't universal. And so I think you and I forged this path that, was different than it
Yeah,
is
it's
now.
so great, like, all the resources
Yes.
and the policy shifts. I mean, I think it's all so wonderful because, I think the reason we get along so well is because 'cause we're both of the belief that if we can make it easier for you, we're gonna do it because no one should have to go through what we went through, so I appreciate that about you. You're also of a different generation than I am, but I appreciate you glumming us together.
In the
So
military spouse world, it's very similar. We're good.
yeah, we're all good. So much, Rheanna. This has been a really great chat. And like at the end of these highlights, I've been giving everybody an opportunity to have the last word. And usually I'll ask them a question about, if the top three tips that they have for military spouses. But since we spent so much time picking your brain about your expertise in social media management, I will leave it up to you about what tips you want to leave, whether it's about maintaining social media strategy or whether it's about, like working as a freelancer, going from freelancer to full-time gig, like you decide. You give whatever tips you want.
Okay, great. So I think my tip is really applicable to kind of all three of those things. And I like to be the most efficient with my time as I can be. So I think whether you're identifying a social media platform or a particular marketing point that you want to focus on, or whether you are thinking about your career and where you want to focus your entrepreneur stuff on, I think really getting good at identifying the top tier important things is what's going to help you be the most successful. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to really push yourself in the marketing world on social media platforms, going to those platforms where you think are going to be the most return on your investment is going to be important. And in your life, right? Focusing on what you think you can accomplish the most effectively, whether that's, hey, I'm not going to take this job opportunity right now because, my kids need me home a little bit more. And then I can focus on maybe freelancing like I chose to do. And I think getting really good at identifying those things. And I think that's something that you and I both kind of share in common is trying to really identify those high level things in your life that you can perform effectively. So I think that is a good tip all around.
No, that's perfect because and you definitely follow that rule because like I mentioned earlier, like I feel I've watched your career go and it just seems to ebb and flow depending on the needs of your family. And
Yep.
so I know that this is not just you saying that, you actually walk the talk. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I know that your kids are home for the summer, so I'm gonna release you to the
Thanks for having
release
me.
the kraken, right? But I hope that you guys will consider sharing your own military spouse highlight because I know that every highlight resonates with a different group of military spouses. And all we want to do is inspire other spouses because it's really hard to be what you cannot see. And, there are some spouses out there who are going to look at Rheanna's story and go, this is me. She's talking to me. And so your story might do the exact same thing for someone else. So please consider submitting a highlight. And I just want to thank Rheanna and I want to thank our friends at USAA for making these conversations possible. And I hope that you guys will be here next week and we will have another fascinating military spouse to chat with next week. Bye, guys.